Welcome. I'm Ramona Luti, and you're tuned in to Ignite Elections Update, your deep dive into the people, parties, and power moves shaping Guyana's 2025 general and regional elections. With elections just weeks away, voters may be focused on candidates and campaigns. But in the background, a different set of eyes is quietly observing the process. These are the election observers, neutral monitors from around the world who play a crucial role in strengthening democracy. Tonight, we're going to look at who they are, how they work, and who's already on the grounds in Guyana. To help explain the rationale behind the electoral observations, we invited one of Guyana's more prominent legal minds. Mr. Nandlal is the current Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs. He is also a candidate for the PPPC, but don't worry, we've locked the campaign hat at the door. Right, Mr. Nandlal?
So you see.
So today he's strictly here for educational purposes. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be part of your program.
Thank you for being here. So we know the simplest definition of observers are independent. Impartial individuals are teams who monitor elections to assess whether the process is free, fair, and credible. So can you explain to us what legal authority governs the presence and activities of the election observation missions?
So that's a very interesting question. And to answer that, I would ask your permission to briefly give a synopsis of the historical evolution
Go ahead.
of overseas observer missions in Guyana. You may know that, well, you should know that we have had rigged elections in Guyana from 1968 to 1985, where the PNC took 2/3 majority of the votes in every one of those elections. I said recently that that is an undisputed and incontrovertible fact now, supported by volumes of evidence. So because you had rigged elections taking place systemically and cyclically, you could not have had international observers, because international observers would have exposed the rigged elections. So the intellectual authors of rigged elections deliberately, by law and policy, kept international observers away from Guyanese elections. After the 1985 elections, and with the change of the geopolitics, the end of the Cold War, and the breeze of democracy began to blow across the Western Hemisphere. The years of agitation for free and fair elections picked up great momentum internationally. In Guyana, obviously. Free and fair elections in Guyana picked up internationally. And Jimmy Carter, chairman of the Carter Center, was invited and sat with President, then Mr. Desmond Hoyt, and leader of the opposition, Dr. Chetty Jagan, and brokered an agreement to facilitate certain crucial changes to the electoral process to ensure free and fair elections return to Guyana. Among the proposals made and agreed upon were one, counting the ballots at the place of poll. That was never something done in Guyana. Young people would find that unthinkable. But the ballots used to be collected, the ballot boxes, and taken to a designated area for alleged counting. But what used to happen, it used to be exchanged.
Okay.
And the real ballots thrown away and fraudulent ballots counted. So that changed. Two, the structure of the Elections Commission changed. And what was then known and is still known as the Carter formula, Carter Price formula, was agreed to and implemented. And that's the formula you have essentially up to now. 3 commissioners representing the government and 3 commissioners representing the opposition parties, with a chair being appointed by the president from 6 names submitted to him by the leader of the opposition. So you had a reformed elections commission with wider powers. Thirdly, you had in law the presence of overseas observers to the elections. And in 1990, most of these changes came in the form of legislation. And the General Elections Observers Act, Chapter 1:10, was enacted in Guyana, and that made it, by law, for the first time, possible for overseas observers to come to Guyana to observe the national and regional elections. So that is the statutory and legal authority for their presence in Guyana and their right by law to observe the electoral process. And the act, the law explains what their powers are and what they can do. For example, they can inspect the voters' roll or the voters' list, obviously. They can request information in relation to the elections from the chairperson of GCOM, from the chief elections officer, and from returning officers during the course of the process. They can go into polling stations and observe polling. They can visit also counting places. They can observe the tabulation and verification of the votes. That is to say, when all the parties are present and they are going through the vote statements of poll by statements of poll to total it for a particular electoral district. And they have general powers of scrutiny and observation of the electoral process. And in the conduct of their functions, they are conferred with legal immunities and privileges similar to that enjoyed by diplomats.
So just to confirm, you talked a little about their entitlements and where they can go and what they can do. But a question that has been burning, a question that is, I have had it. Can the observer mission challenge anything? Can they say, hey, I don't like this, I'm challenging this legally, this, I don't believe this is accurate? Can they do that?
No, they can observe and they can draw an alleged irregularities attention to the elections officials, in particular the chairman of the Elections Commission, and obviously they prepare a report in the end in which they document their observations.
So can this report be used in a legal challenge?
The report can be
To the
used.
results.
The report is normally used as a report on the conduct of the elections. The report would include a finding on whether the elections would have been considered by international standards as free, fair, transparent, accountable, and that's a finding that is invariably contained in the reports. And that's why at the end, one can safely say that the reports, that the elections, were certified by the international observers and local observers to be free and fair. And any person who interferes with or attempts to obstruct one of these observers from discharging their legal obligations commit a very serious offense and liable to imprisonment. Anyone who impersonates an observer and attempts to pretend to be an observer also commits a very serious criminal offense and is liable, once convicted, to be jailed for the commission of that offense.
Okay, so you mentioned international standards. Can you tell me a little more about those? What are some of the standards that we're held to?
Well, first of all, elections, as I've always said, is a legal process. It is contained in broad terms in the Constitution, and then there is always an enabling legislation or a legislative process that outlines step by step how an election is to take place. Beginning from the announcement, well, beginning from the registration of electors or registration of persons who are potential electors, their transferal from a national register to what is eventually called the electoral roll, and the various processes that must be undergone to ensure that qualified people are on that roll. And then that roll is certified to be the list of electors going to the elections. And then you have a whole series of processes that then follow. The establishment of the electoral machinery, polling stations, and a number of rules governing how the elections will be held, all have a statutory basis. It's laid down in the law. How people vote, and how at the end of the process, where they vote, how they are to execute that voting, how the votes are going to be counted, how the results are going to be tabulated, and then eventually there is a declaration of the winner and how you determine that winner. All of that is laid out in the statute. International standards would require due compliance with that particular electoral statutory chain of events. Remember, every country may have peculiar differences in their electoral systems. But by and large, they would have an electoral system that is fair, that is transparent, that allows voters who are qualified to vote a fair and adequate opportunity to exercise their franchise and to do so voluntarily, and then a system that will allow that franchise expressed by a ballot to be fairly and adequately counted with due observation and participation of the relevant stakeholders, and then a fair and transparent method of reckoning the votes and declaring the results and then allocating the seats based upon the statutory formula for the allocation of seats. And that is the process. And almost all countries have a very similar process with minor inconsistencies and peculiarities. And then you, depending upon also what is a differentiating factor also, is the type of electoral system that you use. We have in Guyana a system called proportional representation. Other countries in the Caribbean, or most countries in the Caribbean, have a system that's called first past the post. So there are different systems, they carry different rules. But at the end of the day, the system must, in essence, allow a qualified voter to vote for a party of his or her choice, or a candidate for his or her choice, depending upon the system, and for that vote to be counted, and for that candidate who is the recipient of that vote to benefit from that vote. If he wins as a result, well, then that's it. If he loses, but he must get the benefit of the vote in the final analysis and declaration. And once those standards are met, then the elections ought to be certified as free and fair by international standards.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Nandlal, for being a part of the Ignite Elections update and
You're
for
welcome.
being so insightful. We look forward to having you in another episode to answer some other questions, so, maintaining the same level of unbiasedness.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now we've talked about the what and the why. Let's talk about the who. Who's watching Guyana's 2025 elections? Guyana has officially invited several international observer groups, and 3 have already made their presence known. Those invited are the European Union, the Organization of American States, OAS, the Commonwealth, and the Carter Center. That is a US-based organization known for global democracy work. The Commonwealth and the Carter Center have sent early assessment teams. And just this week, the European Union deployed its long-term observation team. These 14 observers are now stationed across all 10 regions of the country. And both the head and deputy head of the EU mission have been clear about their purpose. Chief Observer Robert Beardron has emphasized the mission's independence and professionalism.
We are here to contribute to transparency and demonstrate that the world is watching these elections with respect and interest. We have no stake in who wins. Our only concern is that the whole process is inclusive and credible, and that every voter casts its ballot freely and with confidence.
The Deputy Chief Observer, Vinaya Aguilova, has called long-term observers the backbone of the mission, saying their work will form the basis of the EU's impartial and fact-based assessment.
Our long-term observers will meet with the different stakeholders in the regions. They will meet with political parties and candidates contesting there. They will meet with the local branches of the election administration. They will also meet with the civil society, local media, and all other interlocutors who are present on the ground. And they will make independent, neutral, and fact-based assessment of the election preparations and also the election process in general in the different locations where they are deployed. Shortly before the election day, we will be joined also by 20 short-term observers. In total, we will be around 50 observers for the election day. We will observe the voting, counting, and tabulation process.
Observers use a standardized global framework to assess elections. These are drawn from international law, UN conventions, and regional treaties. For this campaign season, key areas of observation include equal access to media for all candidates, freedom of speech and assembly, incidents of intimidation or political violence, transparency in campaign financing, and neutrality of state institutions and officials. These standards ensure the focus stays on process integrity, not political outcomes. As Guyana prepares to head to the polls, the eyes of the world are watching, not to interfere, but to ensure every vote counts and the process stands up to international scrutiny. Want to learn more about who's watching the vote? Follow us on social media at Ignite News and join the conversation using #IgniteElections. Once again, I'm Ramona Luti. Thanks for watching.